Mr. Chairman. We actually have a presentation with this request, so
Okay.
I'll load that before I start the timer.
Don't forget to turn your mic on.
Oh, so.
Make sure, Jill. Press your mic button. Turn your mic on.
Push the up and down arrow here?
Left and right, correct.
Good afternoon, Jill Hicks, Chapel Green, Lewis. On January 27th, 2022, I and others testified in opposition to Coral Lakes, now known as Brentwood. The Planning and Zoning Commission originally denied Coral Lakes. We'll get to the point. You'll see what this is about. It's not retrying it.
All right.
But as you know,
Just real quick, hit the pause button a second. We saw the presentation. I think it's the same one, more or less, that was done
Yes.
at council. It's not related specifically to Coral Lakes. It's more
All right.
anecdotal,
Well, it's
using
not.
that as an example.
it's not retrying.
All right,
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Thank you. But as you know, we lost our case in subsequent appeals. Our testimony during the public hearing included a well-researched and authentic concern for surface water flooding and groundwater upwelling if the 110 acres of forest were clear-cut. It's been a year now since the forest has been removed. The worst-case scenario has been realized. We all know that recent storms have put the county underwater, but this picture and the next are from December 11th, before the more recent rain events occurred. Only 1 inch of rain fell on December 11th. In this photo, I have circled the area where the silt fence continually fails to hold the water back and floods onto our properties with each and every storm. And from December 11th through January 18th, 5 weeks, our sump pump and our crawl space cycled 30 seconds, every 30 seconds, day and night. Why? Because the trees, loblollies, and oaks used to absorb 50 to 150 gallons of water per tree per day. Never has our sump pump run like this before, never. During the public hearing, you assured us that the developer cannot legally send water onto our properties. Sussex County Conservation District Inspector John Barwick has been to our property no less than 2 times and confirmed that water from Coral Lakes Brentwood is running onto our property and needs to be corrected. The developer was cited and they added straw for means of remediation. And yet the problem still exists. It has become intolerable. Not only does it make our backyards inaccessible by children and pets, but this also creates a high level of anxiety. This is in the hands of CSD now. They report that the developer must install perimeter drains now rather than wait until construction reaches us in phase 6. And there is no guarantee, though, that drains will work because they will not solve the problem of upwelling. So why am I sharing this with you? To let you know that you got it right the first time when you denied Coral Lakes. To reaffirm that when you reach a decision you know is right, please see it through. When you vacate your decisions, I'm going to advance this. When you vacate your decisions, you are not avoiding a lawsuit, which despite what you may have been told, you cannot be held personally liable when serving as an officer of the county. So when you reverse a decision like this one, you're passing the financial burden and damages onto residents who in most cases do not have the resources to correct this, and no one should have to live like this. We are now asking that PandZ and SCD withhold all building permits from Brentwood until this violation of the law is remediated. Please and thank you.
Thank you. Okay, who would like to be next? Yes, ma'am, right here.
And just for the benefit of the commission, I was expecting that to be a discussion on perimeter buffers. That was my understanding based on comments that were made previously, using Coral Lakes as an example of what our perimeter buffers require now and how they can be improved in the future. You know, to the extent that we're going to, I'm sorry, but that was a relitigation of a prior action that occurred by the Planning and Zoning Commission and also County Council. We're not going to let that happen. I mean, that's not the purpose of the public comment on these Wednesday afternoon meetings.
We're just asking for your support and wait.
You said that you weren't going to relitigate something that was previously approved, and then you went out and said that it should not be, the commission should not go back on prior decisions, and then you talked about liability of individuals on the commission related to a prior approved application. That's relitigating something that's been approved. and that is currently going forward. My understanding was, based upon the presentation slides that we had seen, that this was going to be a discussion about perimeter buffers and going forward with improvements to our perimeter buffer conversation and ordinances, not looking back at a previously approved subdivision. I'm not saying there's not avenues to address that. That's just not during the public comment before the Planning and Zoning Commission.
I do not know how to do the pictures.
Oh, is it the same presentation? My apologies. Let me load it back up. So,
I'm sorry.
it was
That's the first one.
that one there? Yep.
Yeah. But if I were to do it, or how do I do
Your
it?
name is?
I'm sorry, my name is Donna Schmidt. I live at 39 Aintree Drive.
Okay, you got 3 minutes.
I know? Okay. Now, how do I ask to get the pictures up?
If you say, I can move it
Oh, I'm
forward.
sorry. He'll move the pictures for you. I'm sorry. I thought you had worked that out.
No.
Okay.
Okay. I am standing before you today with the hope that you will see that the clear cutting of forests, coral lakes, now known as Brentwood, has increased flooding on my property to intolerable levels. Yes, flooding is an issue in Suffolk County, as we all know. But it is the law, and you stated so yourself, Mr. Chairman, that the law prohibits allowing any water from their site in quantity greater than it is today to run onto your site. This is, in fact, happening on my property. During the storm on September 10th, thank you. During the storm on September 10th, 2023, I can tell you that without the protection of the woods behind our house, I was awake for hours, worried if one of the huge trees, which has now become weakened by flooding and winds, would be coming down on my house. This was a storm that was stated to be as one that has not happened for decades. Well, not as bad, but within 2 weeks until the next storm. Next, please. I have worked countless hours beautifying my backyard, seeding and planting 3 beautiful perennial gardens, not to mention the thousands of dollars I have spent. 2 of the gardens are now underwater with each substantial rainfall. Will they survive? Spring will tell. However, I don't know how long it will be before their roots rot from water flooding. I would never have considered putting in these gardens if the flooding in my backyard is as it is now. Next slide, thank you. There's my backyard. Up to the house, the water is flooding. Each storm requires lots of cleanup that needs to be done, each and every storm. Then we have to deal with the mud issues. I cannot even take my dog out to the backyard to do his business or to play with him. There is no question, I'm sorry, next slide. Those are my gardens. You could see the reflection of the planters. They're underwater. That's one of them. There is no question in my mind that now with the forest removed, we suffer major flooding and high winds. I hope that you can see that too. The appropriate parties have been contacted, and we are waiting for requested information from the parties involved. This is turning out to be a long process. What is happening on my property is unacceptable and will not get better as time goes on. I also request that the Planning and Zoning Commission and SCD withhold all building permits for Brentwood until this violation of law is remedied. Thank you. Oh, there's one more slide. I'm sorry. There you go. Just want you to see the full picture here.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Susan Petsy Rosenbloom, Aintree Drive in Lewis. This is a version of a statement I also made to County Council. It's slightly different. My husband and I moved to Chapel Green about 8+ years ago. We would always get ponding in our backyard whenever it rained, and so a few years ago, we spent several $1,000s to have a French drain installed to divert some of the water away from the house and towards the wooded area of our property. The French drain worked, and it solved the problem. But that was before the 100+ acres of trees behind our property were clear-cut to make way for the latest major housing development. Now we are once again getting ponds in our backyard, including in areas where they never occurred before.
Excuse me just a second. Stop the thing. Please, no talking while this lady is talking. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Now, every time it rains, I feel deflated and depressed because we truly tried to get the message across to planning and zoning before those trees were cut down. My neighbors did a lot of research, and we went into great detail at the hearing for this development, describing the science behind the forest and the wetlands located behind our neighborhood and what happens in the community of Chapel Green when there's a lot of rainfall. And you did listen, but in the end, our concerns were brushed off. I will say that after attending the County Council and Planning and Zoning workshop this past fall, I was relieved to hear how serious you all are in making improvements to the county code, especially with respect to forest and wetlands preservation. But in the meantime, so much damage is still occurring. The fact that it flooded badly in many areas throughout the county, not just Chapel Green, should have been a wake-up call years ago, a sign that things will get worse if we continue to be complacent about the consequences of building with disregard to forest and wetlands. It's happening already. It happened in my backyard. And what am I supposed to do now? I know that property rights are very important in the county, but what about my property rights? And so I'm asking county administration, what recourse does a property owner have when a development creates a nuisance in their backyard? How do we remedy a situation that never should have occurred in the first place? And I'm imploring the Planning and Zoning Commission and the county attorneys to be more vigilant when reviewing land use applications, to enforce the county code, but also look beyond it to ensure that development will not have a terrible, harmful impact on adjacent property owners and neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. Come on.
My name is Carrie Russo. My husband and I live in Chapel Green Community at 43 Entry Drive. I appreciate your service and thank you for listening to Sussex County concerned citizens today. I'm going to cross off most of what I was going to say because it was already been said about the history of Coral Lake's previous Coral Crossing, now Brentwood. Taking you back to a brief history. That's been established. But one point I did want to make was that in that hearing in 2022, Bill Hicks, speaking in opposition, offered a presentation including Sarah Run flowing under Entry Drive. He stated that the Novacell Atkins property adjoined Chapel Green neighborhood, and Chapel Green had already had its flooding issues. Mr. Hicks asked at that time the commission for a clarification of stormwater runoff, and Sarah Run was one of the two outfalls on the proposed design. He asked, what will the proposed site do to exacerbate our current problem, and how can we manage it? Chairman Wheatley responded, and I quote, the law prohibits them from making your situation any worse than it is today, end quote. And then Chairman Wheatley continued, quote, a law absolutely prohibits them from allowing any water from their site in a quantity greater than it is today to run onto your site. So that is your answer to your question. Now that's the law. The reality may be different, but it has to be designed before anything happens with that in mind, end quote. So the clear cutting happened pretty quickly after it had already been gone to the council and the hot potato was put back on your laps. It was approved. So recalling that drainage issue, now that it's impacted as the three previous speakers spoke about, they're told to go to the Sussex Conservation District and request a field visit. And the homeowners make their own record of the flooding and preserve it. And Shell, to my knowledge, remains unaccountable, even after the silt fence was breached and the water flows into the Chapel properties. Shell has not repaired it, and this hits to the core of the property value protection. The entry property lines are in the back of the Brentwood design, which means it will be years, if any, before reaching that acreage to develop back there. Meanwhile, the flooding continues, as Mr. Hicks showed his aspiration about. So one of the questions was, how can it be managed? And Chairman Wheatley responded, the law, but that law was broken, so what's the penalty? Property flooding and erosions get worse with every storm, and meaningful accountability must be addressed. The time is now, because this is where it began. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. I'm Janet Leddy-Gabel, Milton, Delaware. I like your new podium here. I have testified on several applications in this room, and I've listened to several others. Recently, in the last year, the Commission has made the right decision to deny some applications that did not meet some of the conditions in 99C. I am aware that none on the Planning and Zoning Commission are attorneys, nor am I. I also sat here in this room and heard a certain developer's attorney, not once but twice, mention certain action to the Commission if they did not approve her client's application, citing Tony Ashburn versus Kent County. The one case, the only one case. Unfortunately, the Commission has to look at the application plot solely as it abides by the rules of the county. The problem is the Commission cannot rule on the application in the grand scheme of things: traffic patterns, deforestation, environmental impacts, as well as population surges and lack of infrastructure, including schools, hospitals, and medical facilities. It's time, I'll say that again, it's time. It's time for the Commission to make a decision to deny an application interpreting Chapter 99C for the safety of the residents, both present and future, without the fear of being sued by a developer's attorney citing only one case, Tony Ashburn versus Kent County. The Commission is bonded and cannot be personally sued. It's time for the Commission to set a new precedent. How about that? How about your legacy being, I was appointed to serve the Planning and Zoning Commission for the betterment of the residents, both present and future, of Sussex County. Not a legacy saying, I was on the Planning and Zoning Commission, but my hands were tied and I had to approve everything. We need to set a new precedent so that all developers don't think Sussex County is a free-for-all. No rules, everything goes. Let's build in Sussex County. And with the new precedent, we, the residents, can then cite a denial when we speak against an application. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, who's next? Anyone else? Okay, going once, twice. All right, we'll close the public comment period, and our next